She's incredible, by the way. And I watch, too. I think she's incredible. The shot, I watched the shot go in. It's like, couldn't she shoot that way in the NBA? If you want to just give her the ball. She is unbelievable.
Donald Trump has recently made headlines by breaking his silence regarding Caitlyn Clark, and his comments did not just shock WNBA fans, they left Clark herself stunned. This moment is one that reverberates deeply in the sports world, raising many questions and opening new avenues for discussion. Caitlyn Clark's rise in the WNBA has been nothing short of extraordinary, making waves and shifting the sports landscape in a significant way. She has undeniably become one of the league's most prominent figures, and her presence has made an indelible mark on the WNBA. The WNBA has seen its visibility change for the better ever since Caitlyn Clark's arrival, and this is evident in the uptick in attendance at games, media coverage, and general interest in the league. Clark has managed to break through the traditional sports fan base and even extend her influence to a much broader audience, including people who may never have previously given the WNBA a second glance. Her popularity is skyrocketing, and she now stands as one of the biggest names in sports, a rare feat for athletes in any sport. When you think of golf, Tiger Woods immediately comes to mind. Usain Bolt is synonymous with sprinting, and the same goes for basketball with Michael Jordan and LeBron James. In the case of the WNBA, Caitlyn Clark is becoming the equivalent of those names. Her growing influence is so undeniable that even former President Donald Trump has felt compelled to comment on her and the phenomenon that she represents. Caitlyn Clark's fame has reached levels where even the most influential people, those outside of sports, are now taking notice. As a businessman, media personality, and political figure, Trump's take on Clark's rise in the WNBA is significant. His comments underscore how far Clark's influence extends, particularly when it comes to shining a spotlight on the economics of women's sports, an area that often lacks the attention and investment it deserves. Through her advocacy for equal pay and better treatment of female athletes, Caitlyn Clark has used her platform to bring important issues to the forefront, attracting high-profile support from powerful voices in politics, media, and business. Donald Trump, as one of the most influential political figures in the world, lending his support to Clark's cause is a momentous development in the ongoing fight for gender equality in sports. Trump was invited to the Let's Go podcast, hosted by Bill Bitch, Max Crosby, Peter King, and Jim Gray. The discussion inevitably turned to Caitlyn Clark, who is rapidly becoming one of the most recognizable names in basketball, not just in the WNBA but also across broader sports communities. Trump, like many others, had high praise for Caitlyn Clark, referring to her as incredible and even calling her impact on the game a phenomenon. This kind of recognition.
You look at Caitlyn Clark, she is driving basketball. She has higher ratings for her women's basketball in college and the WNBA than any NBA game in the past 2 years. She makes $76,000 a year. Yeah. And LeBron James and these folks, Steph Curry, making over $50 million a year. Should something be done about this?
Well, you'd like to do that, but it's a very complicated thing. It's a very unusual.
Recognition is rare in the world of women's sports, and it highlights the magnitude of Clark's contribution to the game. The podcast host steered the conversation toward the gender pay gap that exists between the WNBA and NBA, a topic that has been heavily debated for years, especially in light of Clark's rapid rise to prominence. During the discussion, the hosts pointed out that while Caitlyn Clark's games generate a great deal of attention, the financial compensation she receives pales in comparison to the astronomical salary.
She's incredible, by the way. And I watch, too. I think she's incredible. The shot, I watched the shot go in. It's like, couldn't she shoot that way in the NBA? If you want to just give her the ball. She is unbelievable. And it's a phenomena.
It's earned by NBA superstars like LeBron James and Steph Curry. In many ways, Clark's influence on the WNBA mirrors the effect that LeBron James and Steph Curry have on the NBA. They drive ratings, attract fans, and generate widespread media coverage. However, the disparity in earnings between players like Clark and their NBA counterparts is glaring, and the podcast hosts brought this issue directly to Trump's attention. Despite his deep understanding of business and market dynamics, Trump appeared stumped when it came to offering a solution to this pay disparity. His response:
It's something that is taking place, and it's unusual. You know, Tiger, when he first went out, remember those days when Tiger went out? He was, or just a great baseball player in the minor leagues, or a first-year football player. You know, you see a running back who's making like minimum, and he turns out to be a superstar. You have that. And, you know, probably there's no real weight to guard against it. It sounds unfair, but somebody agrees to a contract.
This was somewhat underwhelming, but it was clear that he recognized the issue and expressed a desire to see it addressed. What was perhaps more telling than Trump's response to the pay gap was his obvious admiration for Caitlyn Clark's skills as a basketball player. He highlighted her incredible shooting ability, calling her a unique talent who has the potential to transcend the WNBA. Trump even mused aloud whether her skills could translate to the NBA, where she would undoubtedly command a higher salary befitting her talents. This recognition of her talent underscores just how much Clark has managed to accomplish in her relatively short career. Despite the WNBA's relatively smaller market size, Caitlyn Clark has managed to generate tremendous interest and attention, and her earnings, in comparison to her impact on the game, are a testament to the ongoing.
But I see it all the time with football and baseball and even basketball, where somebody comes in, he turns out to be 10 times better. The quarterback for San Francisco, wasn't he the last draft choice? And I watched his two quarterbacks got hurt for the team, and they were having a hard time anyway, but they got hurt, and he comes in as the last draft choice, and he moves the team. You know, he moves it, and other guys that get drafted number one don't move it at all. It's an amazing
challenges female athletes face when it comes to compensation. It's almost surreal to consider how Caitlyn Clark, despite her immense contribution to the league and her undeniable skill, is still earning far less than she truly deserves. She is, after all, the number one star in the WNBA and one of the biggest draws in all of basketball at the moment. For someone with such influence and skill, it's striking that the financial rewards have not followed in equal measure. Her situation is a unique one, and her struggles mirror those faced by many athletes across sports who generate enormous attention but are not properly compensated for it. Trump reflected on the situations of other athletes, such as Tiger Woods, to provide context for Clark's case. These athletes often receive limited financial compensation compared to the massive public interest and attention they generate. In many ways, Caitlyn Clark's experience is not dissimilar to the struggles faced by athletes in other sports. For example, in the NFL, the San Francisco 49ers selected Brock Purdy, a quarterback, with the last pick in the draft. Despite being a Mr. Irrelevant, Purdy quickly became one of the most important players on his team, leading to a situation where his early contract did not reflect his actual value to the franchise. While this example is not directly comparable to Clark's case since she was the number one pick in her draft class, it still highlights the challenges faced by athletes who outgrow their initial contracts and face a mismatch between their worth and their pay. The issue of athlete compensation is a complex one, influenced by factors such as salary caps, rookie contracts, and the sometimes unpredictable trajectories of players' careers. For every underpaid athlete like Caitlyn Clark, there are countless others whose salaries don't fully represent their true value. And while Caitlyn Clark's situation is still relatively unique in the world of women's sports, the conversation about pay disparity continues to grow. It's clear that Caitlyn Clark, by breaking through into the public consciousness and creating such a significant impact on the WNBA, has become a symbol of what women's sports can accomplish, and her fight for fair compensation is one that resonates across the sporting world. Donald Trump's comments about Caitlyn Clark are significant not only because of his status as a public figure but also because they represent a broader shift in how women's sports are viewed. Clark is no longer just a player in the WNBA, she has become a symbol of the potential for women's sports to achieve greater visibility and recognition. And as she continues to push for equality in sports, the spotlight will likely continue to shine brightly on her, even as the challenges remain. Their careers. This is understandable. In professional basketball, the disparity in pay is often evident, particularly when comparing players at different stages of their careers. This is especially noticeable when a rookie player brings more value to their team and league than any other rookie in history. A prime example of this is Caitlyn Clark, the standout rookie for the Indiana Fever in the WNBA, who has made waves in her debut season. Despite her extraordinary talent and massive impact on the sport, Clark's salary contrasts sharply with that of Jackie Young, the highest-paid player in the WNBA, even though Clark is arguably on the same level in terms of skill and potential. Jackie Young, a star for the Las Vegas Aces, earns a respectable $252,450 annually in salary. In comparison, Caitlyn Clark, a rookie, is slated to earn just $765 in base salary for the 2024 season. This presents a glaring disparity between the two players, despite Clark's abilities already matching or even surpassing Young's in many ways. By all measures, Clark has more potential and greater upside as a long-term asset for any team, and her contribution to the league goes beyond what is reflected in her paycheck. Clark is driving significant attention, fan engagement, and merchandise sales, which contribute to revenue growth for her team and the WNBA as a whole. Yet, despite her immense value to the league, her pay remains shockingly low. The difference between Clark's salary and that of the league's top earners is just one example of the broader pay gap in professional basketball. This issue is not limited to individual players but is part of a much larger discrepancy between the WNBA and the NBA. The pay gap between male and female athletes in basketball is one of the most significant across professional sports, and while this divide is expected, it's hard to ignore the inequality. The fundamental reason behind this gap lies in the financial disparity between the two leagues, with the NBA generating substantially more revenue than the WNBA. The NBA has a much longer history, having been established 79 years ago, while the WNBA is in only its 29th season. The NBA had similarly low revenue when it was in its early stages, but over decades of growth, it has evolved into the global powerhouse it is today. The WNBA, though it has made significant strides in recent years, still has a long way to go to close the gap with the NBA. In recent seasons, the WNBA has seen an uptick in TV ratings, but the growth is slow and inconsistent. Despite the league's impressive growth in some areas, it still struggles to attract a mass television audience. In the 2023 season, the WNBA's average regular season viewership was only 55,000, which pales in comparison to the NBA's average of 1.6 million viewers per game. The viewership gap becomes even more evident during the finals. The WNBA Finals in 2023 had an average viewership of just 728,000, while the NBA Finals drew a staggering 11.64 million viewers. This gap highlights the significant challenges the WNBA faces in gaining mainstream attention, despite the presence of remarkable talent, including Caitlyn Clark. Interestingly, the 2023 Women's NCAA Basketball Tournament Final, between Iowa's Hawkeyes and LSU, attracted an audience of 10 million viewers, further underscoring the discrepancy in viewership between college and professional women's basketball. It's surprising that the WNBA, despite having many star players, hasn't been able to capitalize on the attention and excitement surrounding women's basketball to draw larger audiences for its own finals. Caitlyn Clark has been a major catalyst in driving increased interest in the WNBA. Her dynamic play on the court has captured the hearts of basketball fans, and her presence has brought higher than ever attendance to WNBA games. In fact, Clark has helped the league achieve its highest average attendance in 22 years, with 987 fans attending each game on average. However, even this figure is less than half of the NBA's average attendance, which stands at 18,315. Despite the WNBA's ticket prices being lower $87 compared to the NBA's $94 per ticket, the attendance gap remains significant, which points to the broader issue of the league's financial limitations. The revenue gap between the two leagues is stark. The NBA generates $1.58 billion in revenue annually, while the WNBA lags far behind with only $200 million in revenue. This disparity directly affects the compensation structure for players in both leagues. The average salary for an NBA player is exponentially higher than that of an average WNBA player. While the NBA's larger revenue base allows for higher salaries, it also creates a cyclical problem. The WNBA's inability to generate as much revenue results in lower player salaries, which further limits the league's ability to attract top-tier talent. Without this talent, it becomes more difficult for the league to increase its revenue, making it harder to close the pay gap. The pay disparity between Caitlyn Clark and her peers is just one reflection of the broader challenges facing the WNBA. As the league continues to grow, the need for more significant investment and better pay for its players becomes even more.
The only difference is, Mr. President, there's a whole class. In other words, the whole women's sport is relegated to a salary cap that is much, much lower, yet they're driving an audience that's much bigger.
Well, maybe they'll have to change that, but it is based on the one player, it seems to be. It's sort of incredible. It's a phenomenal thing she's got going, but very tricky. When you start getting involved with trying to recreate markets, it gets very, very tricky. I mean, the downside is greater than the upside, Jim.
Or pressing. If the WNBA hopes to compete with the NBA in terms of revenue and visibility, it will need to find new ways to generate revenue, expand its media coverage, and better market its stars like Caitlyn Clark. While Clark's talent is undeniable, her salary, compared to her impact, highlights a larger issue that requires attention. The future of the WNBA rests not only on its ability to grow its fan base but also on addressing the systemic challenges that perpetuate these pay disparities. $1.9 million dwarfing the
Hopefully she'll keep it going, and probably will. She's going to make a lot of money.
Average salary. The salary disparity between the WNBA and the NBA is stark, reflecting the fundamental differences in revenue generation and market dynamics between the two leagues. The highest paid player in the WNBA, Jackie Young, earns $252,450 annually, which is a substantial amount by WNBA standards. However, it pales in comparison to the salaries of NBA stars like Steph Curry, who earns a staggering $55.8 million annually from the Golden State Warriors. This vast difference highlights not only the pay gap between the two leagues but also the distinct financial realities they face. While both leagues are governed by salary cap rules, which are designed to maintain competitive balance, the figures reveal the economic challenges that the WNBA faces in paying its players fairly, given the relative size and revenue streams of the leagues. For context, the NBA operates under a salary cap set at $136 million, ensuring that no team exceeds this limit in player salaries. This system is vital for maintaining competitive balance across teams. The rules governing salary caps in both leagues are adjusted over time through collective bargaining agreements and new deals, which allow for incremental changes. Despite these rules, the WNBA's salary structure is vastly different, with the revenue split between the league and its players being far less favorable to the players than the NBA's. The NBA's revenue is split roughly 50-50 between the league and its players, whereas the WNBA's split is closer to 75-25 in favor of the league. This means that players in the WNBA, despite generating considerable revenue through their performances, receive a smaller share of the league's total earnings, contributing to the salary disparities. The WNBA's 2020 decision to opt out of its collective bargaining agreement, CBA, was partly driven by the fact that players received only 20.5% of the league's revenue. This is a significant contrast to the revenue share seen in the NBA, and it highlights the fundamental challenge that WNBA players face in securing a fair financial share. The imbalance in pay stems from the different market systems in place for each league. The NBA's financial success has enabled it to pay its top players millions of dollars annually, while the WNBA's more limited revenue base restricts the amount it can pay its athletes. The situation is not without possible solutions, however. While the salary cap is necessary to ensure competitive balance, it's worth exploring ways that the WNBA could offer more financial rewards to its players, especially stars like Caitlyn Clark, who are instrumental in driving revenue through their exceptional talent. Donald Trump, reflecting on the challenges facing the WNBA, has suggested that the league might consider offering performance-based bonuses outside of the salary cap to reward players like Clark. These bonuses could be based on the significant revenue generated by players through fan engagement, merchandise sales, and media attention. Although these bonuses would still be tied to performance, they would not be bound by the strict salary cap rules that limit players' salaries. Bonuses already exist in both the NBA and WNBA, rewarding players for individual achievements or team successes. These can range from accolades like Most Valuable Player, MVP, awards, or All-Star selections to bonuses based on team performance, such as making the playoffs or achieving a certain number of wins. These incentives are part of players' contracts and are designed to reward players for their contributions to their team's success. However, Trump's suggestion focuses on the idea of a league-wide bonus system, which would allow the WNBA to directly reward players like Clark for their role in growing the league's visibility and revenue. Given Clark's immense impact on the WNBA, including her ability to draw large crowds and attract significant media attention, a bonus system that compensates her for the revenue she generates could help bridge the gap between her current salary and the value she brings to the league. As the WNBA continues to grow financially,